I think it's great. This is somebody defending freedom and standing up against. I mean, they are laughing while they're giving the Fed the middle finger. And I just think this is beyond highly entertaining. It's very important. Hi, we're back once again with Alan Hibbard. Alan, how are you doing?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks. How are you?
Good. So Dan sent us both an article recently that was on Zero Hedge. You've had a chance to look at it. So let's go over that. You've got it on your computer here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the headline here is the Fed is threatening to sue Bitcoin Magazine. And this is from Friday, November 3rd. Basically, the U.S. Federal Reserve is taking legal action against Bitcoin Magazine in an attempt to silence criticism of its recently launched FedNow interbank clearing and settlement service. Okay, so there's a cease and desist. Hang on, we'll get there. So here's what happened. In a letter sent to the publication, sent to Bitcoin Magazine by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, the Central Bank of the United States is claiming that Bitcoin Magazine merchandise that parodies its services are not protected speech, but rather an unauthorized infringement of its image and trademarks. All right, does that make sense, Mike?
Well, it would make sense if they were actually doing that, yeah.
Okay, all right. So there's some merchandise in question. So Bitcoin Magazine, by the way, which is separate from Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin itself is not a company, but Bitcoin Magazine is.
Yeah, a lot of people that don't really understand cryptos yet don't know that Bitcoin is just basically some code. It's an algorithm that people are running on mining rigs all over the world. And so there is no like address that you can't mail a letter to Bitcoin.
Exactly. Yeah, but Bitcoin Magazine is a company. They do put out a magazine, of course, and tons of other educational materials. They also host the largest Bitcoin conference in the world. It's been in Miami a couple times. It's going to be in Nashville next year. They also do something in Amsterdam. And they have merchandise. And some of their merchandise on their website, which looks like this, says Fed Now. And some of it says End the Fed Now. And they're basically
all labeled with Bitcoin somewhere, Bitcoin Magazine somewhere, right? Yeah.
It has Bitcoin Magazine. It has their logo. It looks like an open magazine there, like on the back. And if you zoom in on one of them, here's the trucker hat. It says "End the Fed Now," and the O in now they turned into an I, an all-seeing eye with this red dot in the middle. So is it the same as the actual Fed Now logo? I mean, I don't think so. If this is the actual Fed Now logo. It says 24/7 instant payments. It doesn't have an all-seeing eye in there. It's this arrow.
That's an awful logo. It's very amateur. It looks like a 24/7 laundry. So now you can use Fed Now, and they'll launder your money for you.
Oh.
So 24/7. It's available anytime.
Oh my, yes. So I agree this isn't a great logo and it suggests something a little different, but that, whether or not it's a good logo isn't part of the lawsuit. So anyways, what the Federal Reserve is alleging is that Bitcoin Magazine used their trademarked name and logo to make a profit, and they issued a cease and desist order. So let's go back and pick it up here. Yeah, the dispute centers around the use of the FedNow service, image, and trademark in a line of merchandise sold by Bitcoin Magazine that seeks to criticize the surveillance capabilities of the FedNow system and how it threatens American civil liberties. Okay, so the Federal Reserve also alleges that Bitcoin Magazine
it's interesting. It says that it seeks to criticize these things, but it doesn't say that they're making these things up. It says it seeks to criticize these things. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because otherwise it'd be probably libel or slander or one of these things.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I forget. I'm not an attorney, right? I'm not a legal professional, so I'm not sure exactly what constitutes each one of these terms. But you make a good point that they're not alleging that they made these things up. Yeah, that's interesting.
They're alleging copyright infringement, and that's it, because it seeks to criticize this surveillance threat that the Fed Now system contains. So
yeah, exactly. So, anyways, the Federal Reserve alleges that Bitcoin Magazine used the trademark without permission to mislead readers, okay, into believing that a connection exists between the publication and the central bank. That's very strange to me, but we're gonna circle back to that.
a real stretch. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so in response to the allegations, Bitcoin Magazine penned an open letter to the Federal Reserve. Okay, so I wanna read that here because it is entertaining and a little humorous. So, dear Thaddeus Murphy, Thaddeus is the general counsel for the Federal Reserve. On behalf of the entire team at Bitcoin Magazine, I wanted to take the time to thank you for your thoughtful inquiry and having browsed our online store. Doing your Christmas shopping early, you love to see it. Let us know if we can send a box of merchandise to any of the 12 Federal Reserve banks. You might enjoy our content from the latest print, Bitcoin Magazine, which discusses the damages your policies have done to our economy and our country. Please don't hesitate to reach out with a list of coveted items, and we will be sure to send them. We want to do our part to stimulate, quote unquote, the economy. I love that.
Well, actually, this would stimulate the economy because this is real transactions happening. It's not sending out free currency to everybody.
Yes.
We're doing a wealth transfer by creating currency.
Exactly. Then he says, on to business. We would like to inform you that while we received your cease and desist request, we refuse to comply. We will not be intimidated by your efforts to silence criticism. As you may know, our publication and our readership are deeply troubled by the new FedNow interbanking communication system. We believe not only that it is possibly unconstitutional, but that it threatens the very freedoms that all liberty-loving American citizens should hold dear. With that in mind, we believe it is well within our First Amendment rights to exercise speech on the issue, and to that end, we will be defending our right to sell merchandise that makes buyers aware, through fair use imagery, our position that this system is a threat to civil liberties. Then he goes on to comment on some of the allegations that the Federal Reserve made in their letter. So he says, I would like to make a few direct comments on quotes present in your letter in order to best articulate what I am sure is to be considered a disappointing response. Yeah, okay. So he says, quote, the Federal Reserve has extensively used and promoted the FedNow mark and has built up substantial goodwill in this invaluable asset. Financial institutions and consumers associate the FedNow mark with the Federal Reserve and its services, end quote. So that use of substantial goodwill is interesting. That's really what he highlighted here. He says, an interesting point. For starters, what goodwill has the Federal Reserve built up? Have you seen the state of the working class today? Perhaps you have already forgotten how Fed policy directly led to mismanaged bond portfolios in regional banks across the country, such as Silicon Valley Bank, Signature, Silvergate, First Republic. Perhaps you have already forgotten about the historic inflation rates seen throughout the US since government-imposed lockdowns all but forced the Treasury's hand to stimulate the economy to the tune of trillions of dollars. There is no goodwill, Mr. Murphy, and certainly not substantial goodwill either. Whew. Let me pause there, Mike. Any reaction to that?
Well, it's I think it's great. This is somebody defending freedom and standing up against. I mean, they are laughing while they're giving the Fed the middle finger. And I just think this is beyond highly entertaining. It's very important that after we've seen these lockdowns and the censorship by social media, and the government sort of directing a lot of social media to pump a certain narrative and to censor any opposition. This is really great. That this is a private entity. It isn't. I don't know what size Bitcoin Magazine is, but I'm sure it's not huge. This isn't like Elon Musk buying Twitter and not doing what the government wants it to do and other people. This is a much smaller business, just saying, this is the United States. We get to think what we want and do what we want unless we're harming somebody else. And I think this is just absolutely wonderful. So go on and read more of it because I think it's funny. And just remember that They are, they're writing down words, but it is like smiling while they're giving the Fed the middle finger.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love it. And you know what? I wouldn't even have known about this merchandise if it weren't for this article coming out. And the article wouldn't have come out if it weren't for the lawsuit. So
Right.
It's interesting that it's generating all this attention that otherwise wouldn't have been there. So,
Exactly. I'll bet their merchandise sales exploded because of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and probably the opposition to FedNow is also going to explode as a result of the lawsuit. So yeah, let me keep going. So just to repeat, there is no goodwill, Mr. Murphy, and certainly not substantial goodwill either. Okay, so another quote from the Federal Reserve complaint. Quote, the Federal Reserve recently learned that Bitcoin Magazine is selling t-shirts, hats, and other wearables bearing the FedNow name, as shown in the screenshot below. Bitcoin Magazine's use of the FedNow mark in this manner is likely to cause confusion, mistakes, or deception. Consumers are likely to believe that the gear is associated with, affiliated with, or endorsed by the Federal Reserve when no such association or relationship exists. End quote. Okay, that's hilarious. I don't think a lot of people would be confused, but so here's how he responds to this. He says, this is false. Bitcoin Magazine is exercising its First Amendment rights to social commentary and parody. I'm sure you'll notice the all-seeing eye that symbolizes the state of total financial surveillance that your agency is seeking to impose on the American financial system. We do not believe that anyone that is familiar with our editorial guidelines and general stance on the world would ever associate Bitcoin Magazine with the Federal Reserve. We agree with your assertion that, quote, no such association or relationship exists. Yeah, I mean, that it seems obvious to me that anyone who knows what Bitcoin Magazine is and knows what the Federal Reserve is knows that these are essentially, in the opposite corners of the ring. They're not
Right.
not the same entity, and they don't have a working relationship.
Yeah.
Yep. So final two paragraphs here. We have no interest in causing confusion, mistakes, or deception. That sounds more like a job for those responsible for telling the market they wouldn't raise interest rates after a massive monetary expansion and then went on to raise them faster than at any time in U.S. financial history.
So they're not just smiling while they give the Fed the middle finger. They are rubbing the Fed's nose in the monetary feces that the Federal Reserve has created.
Yep.
Go ahead and.
Yep. Okay. Final paragraph. We look forward to defending our First Amendment rights. I knew that sounded wrong as I said it. And the opportunity to make clear to all Americans the difference between the open, free, and decentralized financial system that is Bitcoin and the centralized FedNow system that threatens our nation's founding values. Best, Mark Goodwin, editor-in-chief of Bitcoin Magazine.
I would suggest that everybody read this for themselves, just because this is basically, it's a call to stand up for freedom. And you don't want to be sheep being led around, and you want to make your own decisions and decide what is best for you. So I'm not saying that anybody should do any particular thing. Just always keep in mind that you're an individual and you don't have to go along with what the government says.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that the distinction highlighted in this last paragraph here between the centralized FedNow system and the open, free, decentralized system that is Bitcoin, I think that's a really important distinction. And I would encourage everyone to study the two. Just take some time, study one, study the other, see what you want. You can use both. You can use one or the other. I think just...
You mentioned earlier that, in poking around their website, you really couldn't find a good definition of what FedCoin is, where it describes actually how it functions and how it can be used. But from what everybody thinks it can be used as is a surveillance device and a device of control, where they can decide that you will be able to make a transaction or not. Which gives them the control over travel and, a whole bunch of, just a huge range of things. So it's just the government well, they're not the government. They're private, but they're influenced by the government. But it's once again turning over more control to other people, deciding how your life is going to be, what the outcome is going to be, and whether or not you should even be living here or not on this planet. So, yeah. So,
yeah, exactly. So, in poking around their website, which I want to show in just a second,
okay,
it was hard to find a good, reliable explanation of how it works. Not in a meaningful sense, not in a deep sense. And I think that's because it is centralized, whereas Bitcoin, when I tried to figure out how Bitcoin works, it's easy. I can find the white paper, I can download the code, I can look at everything. It is open, it's free, and it's decentralized. So you can, anybody can download the code, read the white paper, play with it themselves, and it doesn't cost anything to do that. However, going to the FedNow website, poking around and reading some of these links, trying to figure out how does this work?
Hi, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for subscribing and mention that if you'd like to help our channel, please consider my company, GoldSilver.com, the next time you buy precious metals. We're one of the most trusted names in the industry. Our prices are sharp, delivery is fast, and we have an insiders program where you find out exactly what I'm doing with my own investments. Thanks for making GoldSilver.com your dealer, and now back to the video.
Some of these links, trying to figure out how does this work at a base level. I couldn't really find anything. Now, granted, I didn't read every single page here and every single bit of text, but I will spend more time on it. What I could find is, this tab here, understanding instant versus faster clearing and settlement. And this, by the way, comes from Instant Payments University, which is on the fednow.org website. They created Instant Payments University with all these bite-sized lessons that explain all these different topics. However, none of them really answer the questions that I have. It's all questions that probably nobody would have. So let me just, without clicking on each one, let me just read some of the titles and see if you notice.
So this is just a sales pitch to advertise it, and they're calling it a university, right?
I guess. I mean, yeah, it's like they just keep highlighting how instant payments are and how much faster they are. And they explain it in text only without even using like visuals, without having like a graphic that shows one person to another or an account to another. It's all just text-based. And it talks about the different types of faster payment transactions. What are faster and instant payments? The anatomy of an instant payment. But again, without a visual, it's just text. Exploring the benefits of instant payments at a glance for payment service providers. Discover the benefits of faster payments. Like, who doesn't know what's good about a fast payment? Instant and faster payments around the world. So, I mean, this is really strange. It strikes me as like, a car salesman who has like a rusted piece of junk with no tires just sitting there, and he's trying to sell it to you saying, oh, look, the seats recline. You're going to love this car. And it's like, it's ridiculous. It's just focusing on the benefits without acknowledging the costs or the potential downsides. And, the potential downsides are surveillance, freezing your accounts, having your money confiscated, not being able to travel, not being able to buy food. I mean, the list goes on and on. You could essentially be cut off from society because of a centralized organization.
Yes, right. This is the China model.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So anyways, the issue here, the original article we were looking at is just a lawsuit that the FedNow logo is being used improperly. They issued a cease and desist. Bitcoin Magazine isn't going to comply. We'll see how it pans out in the future. It's kind of a nothing issue, but like we said earlier, it generated so much attention. Now people are going to be paying attention to it and paying attention to FedNow and how it violates our constitutional freedoms. So
I actually think it's a big issue just because of their response. That, they stood up and said, I'm sorry, but you can't intimidate us. We're going to stand up for freedom. I think that's just awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. It's definitely a bold response to, right, in my mind, like we used your logo. I mean, that's not a crime. I mean, you can take legal action, but To me, it seems like a silly issue, but it is a bold response. The response is more important than the issue. So maybe I wasn't clear about that.
And to me, there are basically two ways to circumvent this control that they're trying to impose on us, and that is cryptos and gold, precious metals, gold and silver. And those are the two main ways to not buy in to becoming part of this surveillance state and total control.
Exactly. Yeah. Physical gold and digital gold. Yeah. So I've got a meme here.
There should be another asteroid coming in, though. In episode 8 of Hidden Secrets of Money, where it's, from Bitcoin to Hashgraph, I do say that the world's central banks, and this was done back in 2014, when they thought that Bitcoin and distributed ledger, the blockchain, that this was just a joke. It was just going to go away. It was a fad, and they just ignored it. And until it became so big and it was coming up on them so fast that they actually had to do something finally. And I said that they are like dinosaurs looking up at this bright thing in the sky coming at them and not realizing that their own demise is imminent.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when you said that at first they were just laughing, that reminded me of the quote that I think is from Gandhi. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Yep.
It's like, that's exactly how it's playing out here. So yeah, okay. Amazing. So I have one other meme here. It's a quote from Murray Rothbard. He said, "Who wants good people in government? Good people should be in the private sector, helping us out, helping themselves out. We want schmoes in government. We want people who can't find the doorknob. Why waste productive people as well as looting the taxpayer?" That's a funny take.
It's great. The only problem is we do have schmoes in government that can't find the doorknob, but they still tax us and loot us so well, and then put all of these impediments in front of progress and trade and the markets that I believe that it really damages our prosperity. And one thing about prosperity, when a transaction doesn't happen today, 10 years ago that has diminished our prosperity out in the future permanently. And you can't go back and fix a transaction that didn't happen because of a law, a regulation, overtaxation, all of those things. So anyway, yeah.
Yep, exactly. All right, one final one to end us off here.
The people who are 30 trillion in debt are giving you a credit score. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe, and smash that thumbs up.
Hi, I just wanted to tell you about GoldSilver's 111-ounce silver giveaway, where you can win 111. One 1-ounce silver bar, one 10-ounce silver bar, and one 100-ounce silver bar. So enter today and win.